Hey, what's happening, everybody? Peter Olinto back with you. I hope you enjoyed the webinar. I was very excited, but in my rush to get to the Q&A at the end, there was a tip I wanted to give you about the first multiple choice, a way to solve it where when it's a theory-based question, especially with the ratios, and they don't give you dollar amounts to work with, it could sometimes be challenging to do the analysis in your head. So I want to show you a little helpful hint with that. And the second multiple choice, we didn't have a chance to work at all, so I want to solve that with you as well. So the first multiple choice, again, was the local currency has been appreciating steadily versus the functional currency, which is the same as the parent currency. All right, so we know the functional currency equals the presentation currency. You know that means the parent controls. We're using that temporal method. Any gain or loss is going to go right on the income statement. The parent is actively involved, right? Functional primary economic environment, parent currency. All right, they tell us the subsidiary is using FIFO inventory costing, so they sell the old. And they want to tell us, they want us to know, well, the gross margin in the local currency versus the gross margin in the presentation. This is what I was saying, the helpful hint, the tip I want to show you. Let's make up numbers, easy numbers. So in the local currency, you got your sales minus your cost of goods sold divided by your sales. There's your gross margin. Make up whatever numbers you want. 10 minus 4, sales are 10, so your gross profit margin is 0.6. I want to do that same thing, though, in the presentation currency, following the rules that the local currency is appreciating in value. So let's say January 1, the exchange rate is 1 for 1. The local currency is buying 1 of the presentation. Let's say at December 31st, the local currency is now buying 1.4 of the presentation currency. And let's make the average throughout the year that the local currency, would just split it, 1.2. All right, there's your average exchange rate. Okay, so now if you're using FIFO, FIFO sells which ones? You sell the old. So let's pretend that stuff was bought on January 1st. Alrighty, whereas the sales have to be converted at what? The average. So knowing that we're doing the temporal method, we know sales and most expenses use the average exchange rate. Alrighty, so let's take the sales of 10. Let's multiply that by the average exchange rate, 1.2. So now in the presentation currency, 12. A major exception to that is when you expense your inventory cost of goods sold. If you're using FIFO and you're selling the old stuff, well, let's pretend that cost of goods sold of 4, let's say that was bought on January 1st, beginning of the year. Okay, we're selling the old stuff. So that would be the January 1 exchange rate. So that stays at 4. So now we've got 12 sales minus cost of goods sold, 4, divided by the sales of 12. So now your gross margin is 0.67. So in the presentation currency, obviously the cost of goods sold, okay, relative to the sales, well, that didn't increase at the same rate as the sales. The sales are using the average rate. FIFO using the old rate before the local currency started appreciating in value, so your gross margin is higher in the presentation currency. But the beautiful thing about the numbers is you prove it to be true. There's nothing better exam day than to confidently pick choice C, having crunched the numbers even though numbers weren't provided. So that was my tip I wanted to give with that one. Now, sometimes you don't need numbers like here. I'll show you the difference. You don't always have to create numbers. I'm not looking to have you unnecessarily waste time. Certain things can be answered quickly without using numbers, okay? Like for this one, the presentation currency is appreciated steadily again versus the functional. But now the functional is the same as the local currency. So you stop. Local currency is the functional currency. We got to go to the presentation. That means we're doing the current rate method, and then we immediately think any gain or loss is going to go where? Direct to equity. Cumulative translation adjustment, part of other comprehensive income. Okay, any gain or loss. Good news, positive adjustment. Bad news, negative adjustment. Alrighty. Now, they tell us the company's using LIFO now, so the subsidiary is using LIFO, but now we're not doing gross margin. Look what ratio we're doing now. The interest coverage ratio, EBIT divided by interest expense. Remember what we spoke about last night. current rate method, both the numerator and the denominator, well, this is all income statement. Under the current rate method, all income statement uses what? Average. We're going to adjust the numerator and the denominator by the exact same exchange rate. That means there'll be no change in the ratio. It'll be the same. So anytime it's all income statement or all balance sheet, because balance sheet, we would use the current exchange rate. If you adjust both the numerator and the denominator by the current, all balance sheet will be the same as well. Where we have a problem and we would need to make up numbers possibly is when we're mixing and matching income statement and balance sheet, right? Because the income statement adjustment, that'll be the average. The balance sheet, when we adjust to the presentation currency, well, the balance sheet number will be the current rate. So now when you mix and match, it might be helpful to make up numbers. But here, you don't need to do that. Alrighty, so remember, the questions average out. You know, that average of 3 minutes is kind of a joke because rarely does a question take 3 minutes, ironically. Either they could be answered really quickly, like this question, 30 seconds or less, or it's more math intensive, or it's theory based where you got to make up numbers, like in this problem. If that helps you, then it might take a little bit longer, okay? So, yeah, those were the tips I wanted to give you for that. So good luck studying. Hopefully I'll see you guys in class. Thanks again for tuning in.